Hello fans, viewers, and fellow fossil fighters. I'm Stephen Bereznicki, and today's the day where I finish my Elemental Vivosaur group playlist with none other than the Legendary element. As fossil fighters fans such as myself know, the Legendary element, also known as Ether to a lesser extent, functions very similarly to the Neutral element, which was previously discussed on this channel. Namely, that has no elemental advantages nor weaknesses when battling. But Legendary is still its own element, separate from the Neutral element, and as a result, is not necessarily compatible with Vivosaurs of the Neutral element, etc. Anyway, for this list, we'll be looking at my ideas for Vivosaur groups that could consist of 2 to 3 or 4 through 6 originally created Vivosaurs that could be of the Legendary element. Now, I'm not saying that all these Vivosaur groups have to be in the game as Legendary element, as some of these could be any of the other elements if Nintendo and Red Entertainment so choose, such as with the boneysaurs. Rather, I'm saying that some of these groups are ranked based on what I think is the likelihood of them appearing as among the Legendary type. If more than one of these Legendary element Vivosaurs make it into the game, they should have team skill compatibility with each other, hopefully in addition to the return of the other Legendary Vivosaur groups from the first 2 games, namely Gunash's Brains and Zonga Zonga and the Zombiesaurs. And one more thing, after seeing this video, feel free to let me know what creative group ideas you have for the Legendary element, or additional creative Vivosaurs of your own to the ideas I displayed. Alright, let's get started. Number 10. Biosource, based on chemical science. Starring the list is a group of Vivosaurs I call Biosource, that are based on chemical compounds such as hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, etc. Yes, this idea does come from some of the chemical dinosaurs from Yu-Gi-Oh!, but I do have some different ideas. For example, I imagine a ceratopid called Oxyceras representing oxygen rather than a pterosaur, as well as a prehistoric mammalian animal as a boss Vivosaur representing diamond, with a name like Dimotherium. Additionally, Hydrotitan, Deuterodon, and Carbodon could finish the group quite nicely, as a Hadrosaurid, an Ankylosaur, and a Theropod Vivosaur, respectively. Number 9. Judosaurus, based on Japanese fighting styles. Now this pick is kind of based on some of the Street Fighter terminology, and I think also some Japanese wording, hence this pick's name of Judosaurus. I have 3 Vivosaur names that come to mind. Satsurus, based on Akuma's Shungoku Satsu technique. Ryu Kentro, similar to the term Shoryuken, which for fun is also a mix of the names Ryu, Ken, and Kentro, as in the Vivosaur Kentro, and Karatex, a sort of karate T-Rex, if you will. Satsurus can be more aggressive than the 3, basically the Akuma of the Vivosaurs, with high speed and also attack power rivaling that of even T-Rex. To balance him out, though, much like Akuma himself, he would have to have relatively low LP compared to other carnivorous Vivosaurs, and some low defense, though not as low as that of Dynamaton. And it should come with negative support effects, which means one should keep him in the attack zone. Ryu Kentro could be the more defensive Judosaur, complete with a counter skill and a high defense stat to match, as well as having some defensive support effects that can raise defense and speed by a decent margin, but slightly reduce the attack and accuracy stats by 10%. Being based on Kentrosaurus, it should make sense giving it a moveset like this. Karatex could be the more balanced and resilient Judosaur, basically an all-around Vivosaur that is somewhat the opposite of Ryu Kentro in terms of stat gains and losses. It could also be equipped with a high critical rate and decent speed. And for the cherry on top, any of these Judosaurs can and should have team skill compatibility with the original Japanese Vivosaurs, F-Raptor, Mihu, and Futabi. I mean, all of these Japanese Vivosaurs and the Judosaurs are based on Japanese culture, so why not give the original Japanese Vivosaurs the much needed compatibility boost they deserve, right? Number 8. Future Vivosaur Variations. Now when I say future, I mean in the distant future, as in with flying cars, fancy spaceships, and other cool superhero gadgets, not to mention Vivosaurs that underwent some form of evolution by that time. With that in mind, I imagine a pterosaur called Astrodon, an oversized terrestrial ammonite called something like Giga Gaudry, as a sort of reference to the walking mega squid featured in the, unique Animal Planet program The Future is Wild, and last but not least, a Tachyon T-Rex called Tachyrex. Astrodon could be a top-class speedy Vivosaur with rocket jets that has cool eyeglasses of the future that can detect weak points in the opponent, as in land critical hits often. Giga Gaudry could be a slow-walking but powerful terrestrial ammonite with tentacles that inflict long-range damage without fear of being countered. As with the Mega Squid in The Future is Wild though, it could be offset by its low speed, and also some otherwise not too negative support effects while in the support zone. Tachyrex could be the strongest of the three, with an insane record-breaking 105 base attack power, as evidenced by his apparently being a genetically enhanced descendant of T-Rex, and also evidenced by an extremely muscular right arm that packs a punch, literally. To hold it back a little, it could have moderately low defense and speed stats and the highest negative support effects of the future Vivosaurs. And I don't want to give him the high critical rate, so as not to push it beyond its limits, at least as far as genetic enhancements go. Otherwise, we'd probably get what might be basically the Gen 1 Mewtwo of the Vivosaurs. Besides, we kind of already have Dynal in the first Fossil Fighters game filling that role. Number 7. Constellations, based on Constellations. These Vivosaurs could be hidden in the stars above, and probably literally too. I came up with 3 different Vivosaur ideas for this group, the first of which is Taurus, based on Peloro, the only bovine Vivosaur in the entire franchise. Next up is Leorion, a Makai-like Vivosaur with the mane of a lion, and his name is a mix of the words Leo, Orion, and Lion. And lastly, the boss of the Constellations, Gordon, a sauropod Vivosaur based on the dipping gourd, with a shovel-like design for where the head is. Also, Gordon is a slight anagram of the Pokemon named Groudon. Get it? Gordon? Groudon? Anyway, Taurus could be a Vivosaur that can rotate the enemy team with such power behind those horns, sometimes leaving the Vivosaurs on the front suddenly in the back row, and leaving them wide open for long-range attack from Gordon. Sorry. Leorion could be the least strongest, but the fastest of the Constellations, lending its good support effects to its team from the support zone. Gordon would obviously be the larger of the 3, but also the slowest, probably more so than Frigi, though such could be made up for with the inherently high LP in defense, maybe even power scale. Number 6. Mythosaurs, mythical creature Vivosaurs. Now this pick is based on 3 mythical creatures, 2 of them being the most well-known, and one that deserves more attention. These 3 come to my mind. Dark Drogon, a dark, dragon. Gryphon Wing, a griffin that's partly based on the Phantom Gryphon Yu-Gi-Oh card, and Cosmic Unicorn. Okay, not very original, but something that should work, right? Dark Drogon is a Mythosaur that wields dark flames to poison the opponent, and is equipped with a parting blow ability for when the going gets rough. Gryphon Wing could be the fastest Mythosaur, which shoots feathers out of its wings to inflict counterproof damage, and can also use a tornado skill that attacks the entire opposing team without a team skill. Finally, Cosmic Unicorn is a Mythosaur that can vex the opponent, inflicting random effects on it, and it can use its singular horn to scare the opponent to limit its moveset. Number 5. Additional Elemental Legendary Vivosaurs. This pick of 2 additional quote-unquote Elemental Legendary Vivosaurs is pretty much a no-brainer, namely, those of which represent the Earth and Air elemental types, by a Ceratopid and a Pterosaur, respectively. The Ceratopid Terra, short for Terraceratops, is in my opinion a perfect representation of the Earth element. Dinero, short for Dinerodon, would probably be the fastest of all the elemental legendary Vivosaurs, but overall the least strongest, which however could be compensated by an Enrage skill to have a chance to make the opponent's attack miss. As for the elemental legendaries Frigi and Igno before them in Champions, both Terra and Dinero should come with a solar power ability for when either are the last Vivosaur standing. Number 4. Aceratosaurs, Steel Vivosaurs. Aceratosaurs, you might wonder, what's that supposed to be? Well, as it turns out, the word acero is Spanish for the word steel. Plus, personally, I thought Steelosaurs wasn't creative enough. I imagine the Aceratosaurs being used by a crime syndicate, in a vein similar to the Barebones Brigade in Fossil Fighters Champions who have their boneysaurs, except that the legendary element Aceratosaurs would be used by what I call the Shield Shattering Syndicate, or the Triple S for short. Anyway, I have 6 ideas for Aceratosaurs, one of which could be DLC Vivosaur in a similar manner to the boneysaur Salada. First up, we have Aceratops, a Ceratopid Vivosaur that has screw drills for horns, an axe on its tail, and chisel heads for its left rear foot and right front foot. The latter about the feet might sound a little too specific, but this is a Shield Shattering Syndicate we're talking about. I mean, especially if it has a parting blow ability, right?
Yeah, and in fact, I actually have a sketch about an interpretation of what Aceratops would kind of look like. Okay, so we have the brow horns, which with the drill horns, at the tips of the said horns. We also got a drill for a nose horn, and also we got the axe tail, and we also have the chisel feet, which is on the front right and the rear left legs. And then we also got this emblem here, which is the Shield Shatter Syndicate kind of emblem, you know what I'm saying? And then we also got some spikes on the middle of its back. So yeah, this is basically my interpretation of what the Aceratops would look like if it appeared in Fossil Fighters.
Second, we have Nail Naga. Basically a steel tophus with hammering nails for fangs and a nuts and bolts rattler. Its specialty would obviously be poison skills via the rust on its fangs. Third, we have Shovel Ghost, a stegosaur with a pickaxe for a tail and shovel heads for its backplates. This Aceratosaur plays dirty, literally, using auto counter to strike back at its foes and throwing mud in the opponent's face and raging it. Next up, we have Warsaur, the name of which is a mix and play on the words Warsaw, as in Warsaw Pact, and Dinosaur, which could be a Spinosaur like Vivosaur with a high attack set and a serrated and curved arm saw for inflicting critical damage often.
And here is another interpretation of one of the Aceratosaurs if he were to be in Fossil Fighters the next game. Okay, so this is a Warsaur, which is kind of like a mix of the words Warsaw as in Warsaw Pact and Dinosaur. So, sorry, I know I overdid it with the spiky club tail and all the spikes on the tip of his wings and, some of his arms. But I just wanted to, give it the kind of feeling that, it's like if he were to inflict critical hits often. So we also got the saber teeth and also an energy beam shooting out of its mouth, kind of like a Dynamaton. And here's also the brow horns, kind of like a Ceratops, Ceratopid dinosaur. And I apologize if I overkilled it with all the spikes all over his wings and body. But I just wanted to give it a sharp kind of feeling, you know what I mean? Kind of like Doomsday from DC,
And now for the boss Vivosaur, Hakimera. A chimera like Vivosaur with 2 wings and 3 heads. A saber-toothed Smilos head with the mane of a lion, a hammer-headed Paralf head, and on its tail, the head of a tophus. The name Hakimera is a portmanteau on the words hack, as in hacking away with a tool, and chimera. If the triple S did exist in a future Fossil Fighters game, Hakimera would be the main Vivosaur used by the final boss, with a slew of insane techniques to confound and test a player's skills as a fossil fighter. And lastly, we have my idea for a DLC Aceratosaur, Scissorobs, a Gorgonopsid like Vivosaur with scissors for saber fangs that could have solar power. Number 3. Glyphosaurs, Greek letter Vivosaurs. This might be one of the more interesting picks of this list, at least in my personal opinion. These 5 Glyphosaurs, which are based on the Greek alphabet, have names based on a mix of suffixes related to dinosaur and other prehistoric animal names, such as Don, Saurus, etc., and certain letters of the Greek alphabet. For example, a sauropod Vivosaur, which could be one of the boss Vivosaurs of this group, would be named Alphadon, which is a small reference to the Titanosaur named Alpha in the Discovery show Dinosaur Planet in the episode Alpha's Egg. Aside from that, Alphadon could be equipped with a mighty skill called Greek Genesis, which could mess up enemy formations with a rotation skill. Another Glyphosaur, which could be a Dromaeosaurid, should be called Betaraptor, or maybe even Deltaraptor, based on the Greek letters Beta and Delta respectively, though I'll leave it up to Nintendo and Red Entertainment to choose which sounds cooler, or else which name makes more sense. Regardless, this speedy raptor could inflict the ultimate poison, the same kind of poison that U-Raptor utilizes that takes half the total LP of its victim, with a name like Beta or Delta Poison, in addition to having at least one inferior poison skill. And when teamed with the other boss Glyphosaur, more on that soon, it should have support effects that increase the attack and accuracy stats by 75 and 50% respectively. Up next would be the elephant-like Gamatherium, based on the letter Gamma, which could have higher defense and LP stats than 2 out of the 5 other picks of this list, though nowhere near as much as Alphadon. I imagine that it would also be based on the Oliphants from the Lord of the Rings movies. You know, those gargantuan enemy pachyderms with 4 tusks as opposed to the usual 2? Back on topic, Gamatherium could be equipped with a skill called Gamma Grounder that attacks all opposing Vivosaurs randomly several times, much like Celadus' Thousand Island attack. Next for this pick would be the Parasaurolophus like Epsilophodon, based on one of my favorite Greek letters, Epsilon. This Glyphosaur could be the more well-rounded of the 5, with a decent 20% increase to all stats, and it could be equipped with an 85% counter skill called something like Epsilon Ensemble. And last but certainly not least, we have the other boss Glyphosaur, Omegasaurus Rex, or Oryx for short. Obviously based on the T-Rex and the last letter of the Greek alphabet, Omega, Oryx should be the strongest Glyphosaur, with a mighty skill similar to Zonga Zonga's Soul Shatter skill called Omega Oblivion to match. I mean, with a skill like that, Oryx could probably be the better Zonga Zonga, though admittedly that might be debatable. In any case, these Glyphosaurs deserve to have a chance to be in a future Fossil Fighters game as much as any of the other picks on this list. Number 2. Pantheosaurs, Pantheon Venosaurs. Sure, the Glyphosaurs sound awesome, but words and letters alone don't make the battle. I mean, this next pick in particular is based on gods. That's right, gods of 3 different religious pantheons, one each from Egyptian, Norse, aka Vikings, and Hindu pantheons. That might sound a little specific, but hear me out. When I first saw the analysis of the death battle between Samurai Jack and Afro Samurai, don't worry, no spoilers here. As it turns out, Samurai Jack's sword was forged by Japanese monks with the powers of said pantheons, those of the Egyptian, Norse, and Hindu. That serves as the inspiration for what I call the Pantheosaurs. And let's just say that one Pantheosaur alone is powerful, but in the wrong hands, the results of wielding all 3 could be catastrophic. First up, we have Osiris-saurus, the prosauropod of the Pantheosaurs, which could take some inspiration from Slifer the Sky Dragon, which is named Sky Dragon of Osiris in Japanese and some other languages of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game, or maybe from Fossil Fighters Frontiers Earth Dragon 2. Whereas Frigii commands ice, Osiris-saurus could command thunder and lightning, much like Slifer. Shockingly, or probably not, this legendary Vivosaur could be probably the most broken of all the Pantheosaurs, and maybe of all Vivosaurs, inflicting criticals often. It could be offset by low speed, but what is speed compared to such power output, right? Next, from the Norse, we have Asgardus, a pterosaur based on the realm of Asgard. Its name is a mix of the words Asgard and the pterosaur named Sordus. I imagine Asgardus being the quickest but least strongest of the Pantheosaurs, but don't take that lightly. If you're thinking of messing up their battle formations, Asgardus might just beat you to it, namely with a rotation skill of its own. And like Gera and Jara, if his LP is low, it could reduce his LP to 1 to inflict heavy damage. And now, from Hindu mythology, is Shiva Ceratops, a ceratopod pantheosaur based on the Hindu deity of destruction, Shiva, which is fitting, and being a god of destruction, Shiva should have the highest attack stat of all ceratopod Vivosaurs, with an attack all skill that could scare opposing Vivosaurs. And for all of these pantheosaurs, being equipped with the solar power ability could really test your skill to the fullest. Now before you see my top pick, here's one honorable mention, Obscurosaurs. In the Fossil Fighters Frontier manga, these creatures were briefly mentioned, though not really elaborated on, beyond that the Vivosaur Lythro was experimented on to become one, though the experiment failed, leaving Lythro as, a scary looking Vivosaur. Number 1. Hybrosaurs, hybridized Vivosaurs. As Jurassic World and the most recent Yu-Gi-Oh! Movie, The Dark Side of Dimensions, have shown, the potential of technology is nearly limitless. Almost as limitless as those dang YouTube advertisements getting a high-definition treatment while the interrupted video you're trying to watch struggles to continue playing with terrible connections. Regardless, what I have in mind is similar to the Indominus Rex and Jurassic Park's Chaos Effect toy line, which are Vivosaurs called Hybrosaurs, which have their DNA mixed with other Vivosaurs. One idea I have is Stegoceratops, which, while not exactly original, was seen in both Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s and as a possible fusion in some recent Jurassic World games. This Hybrosaur can inflict criticals often, and could possess the auto-counter ability. I mean, look at the horns and spikes on this thing. Yikes. Another Hybrosaur I can think of is Pterosuchus, a pterosaur with crocodilian scales that protects it from critical hits. It could be equipped with a skill that rotates the enemy team, as well as one that uses low LP to inflict heavy damage. Next, we have Chiloraptor, or K-Raptor for short, which is basically a dromaeosaurid with ankylosaurid armor, protecting it from critical hits. It could also have a skill that can steal both LP and FP, and another that can poison the opponent. Finally, we have a Tyrannosaurid Hybrosaur called Ribosaurus Rex, as in Deoxyribonucleic acid Rex, or RX for short. The strongest Hybrosaur, our Rex can scare the opponent silly, limiting their options as well as attacking all opposing Vivosaurs at once. And giving this Hybrosaur the Law of the Jungle skill and the Solar Power ability should really seal the deal. Now for secret number 11, we have Mythosaurs, mutant Vivosaurs partly based on the concepts of the Pokemon Grimer and Muk, and Mewtwo to some extent, and based on the theory that nuclear waste gives creatures powers. Either that, or they'd be supposedly failed experiments that escaped. Not very original, granted, but this is all I can think of at this time. Do you agree with my picks? As I said in the video's intro, feel free to let me know what creative group ideas you have for the legendary element, or other creative Vivosaurs of your own, in addition to the ideas I've displayed. Be sure to like and subscribe for more videos by Bereznicki. Alrighty, be safe, and have a great day.